Unlike many stories, Elden Ring starts not with a birth, but with a death. You play a character known as the Tarnished, an unremarkable nobody descended from members of a once mighty army banished from the lands between by Queen Marika, the Eternal, the goddess who wields absolute power as part of a cultural and spiritual regime she calls the Golden Order. Long, long ago, Marika stripped your ancestor of the grace of gold, severing them from connection with the divine. Centuries, perhaps millennia later, upon your death, you are awakened from foggy, endless slumber by the grace of gold returning to you. Marika is calling you back home. You arrive to discover a land on the brink of death, full of decaying castles, bloody battlefields, and poisoned earth. Marika's glorious Golden Order is in shambles. As you explore the lands between, you find tantalizing hints about the history of this place, scattered clues about how things got to be this way. You've been called back to these lands to defeat Marika's demigod children and take your place as the new Elden Lord. But why? Isn't Marika a goddess? Didn't she banish your ancestors? Why does she need you? What is an Elden Lord anyway? One of the fundamental questions Elden Ring seems concerned with revolves around the concept of sovereignty. What does it mean to be sovereign? How does one become sovereign? And, just as important, how does one remain sovereign? Throughout the game, you meet many characters trying to answer these questions. For example, deep inside Stormvale Castle lives Godric the Grafted, a distant descendant of Marika's first Elden Lord. Godric believes that he can acquire and maintain power by kidnapping people and literally grafting their bodies onto his. It's even implied that he knows Tarnished are being called back to the lands between and is ambushing them before they set foot inside his castle. He believes that with enough grafting, he will become worthy of leading the Golden Order back into glory. Another character obsessed with sovereignty is Morgott, the Omen King. Morgott, too, is a descendant of the first Elden Lord. Morgott has become the last king of Leyndell, once the seat of Marika's power, now a ruined necropolis. Morgott is a true believer in Marika's Golden Order and does everything he can to preserve it. He ambushes you twice in the early game. He sends his shadowy Knights Cavalry after you if you stay out too late, and he uses his magic to seal off parts of the world to prevent your progress. However, in this world, the only true sovereign is a god, because a god controls the eponymous Elden Ring, the source code governing the fundamental metaphysical characteristics of reality. A god can rewrite the rules, any rules, including life and death. The current god of the age, Marika, did just that. In the Age of Plenty, she bestowed life-giving blessings using the sap of the sacred Erd tree. After her son Godwyn was assassinated, in her grief, she removed death itself from the Elden Ring, and now, no one in the lands between can die a true death. This is not the mercy it may sound like. Marika's literal command over life and death should have instantly reminded me of Achille Mbembe's work on Necropolitics, but I actually didn't make the connection until 2 years later when an expansion to Elden Ring was released called Shadows of the Erd Tree. In this expansion, for the first time in thousands of years, someone new ascends to godhood, and this side story reveals to us more about that process. We learn a really interesting fact about becoming a god. To ascend, to be a god, one must have a lord to serve them. And when I sat down to think about why that was, it struck me like a lightning bolt. In the world of Elden Ring, what is a lord's function? The game shows us 4 examples of Elden Lords serving gods, but to set the stage, let's start with Godfrey, a barbarian chieftain once known as Hoarah-Loux, chosen by Marika to be her consort. Before becoming Lord, he was known as a savage warrior carving a bloody path through the Badlands. Upon entering Marika's service, he led his army against her greatest enemies, the giants who controlled a flame capable of burning the Erd Tree. He also single-handedly defeated a rival known as the Storm King. According to the game, when Godfrey defeated his last enemy, he felt the grace of gold leave him and his army. And once they were banished, Marika chose an enigmatic figure named Radagon as her next lord. How did he rise to prominence? He fought in 2 wars against religious rivals who worshipped the moon instead of the Erd Tree. Under Queen Marika, the Elden Lord seems to have a very singular purpose: to kill for her. In the very first paragraph of Achille Mbembe's essay, Necropolitics, he says the following: "The ultimate expression of sovereignty largely resides in the power and capacity to dictate who is able to live and who must die. To kill or to let live thus constitutes sovereignty's limits, its principal attributes. To be sovereign is to exert one's control over mortality and to define life as the deployment and manifestation of power." Once I made this connection, the entire thematic landscape of Elden Ring felt like it was laid bare before me, and each new paragraph in that and other essays seemed written in eerie anticipation of the game's story. For example, after Marika secured the defeat of the giants, she sealed off the entrance to their mountain, literally christening it the Forbidden Lands. Even more extreme, there's an entire continent within the lands between that Marika rewrote out of existence because it was home to a population religiously loyal to the Erd Tree's predecessor, a population she seduced and betrayed on her path to godhood. This land became the Land of Shadow, and we don't even know its true name anymore. She erased that too. In this imprisoned land, Marika's forgotten son Mesmer has been given carte blanche to wage genocide against the inhabitants. Their cities have been obliterated and burned, and their sacred places sealed away to cut them off from their ancestors and their gods. Mbembe writes, "Historically, one of the strategies of the dominant states has always consisted in spatializing and discharging that terror by confining its most extreme manifestations in some racially stigmatized third place: the plantation under slavery, the colony, the camp, the compound under apartheid, the ghetto, or as in the present-day United States, the prison." Mesmer's genocide on Marika's behalf was so monstrous it is never spoken of in the lands between, and many inhabitants have no knowledge of it. This may be another reason Marika veiled these lands from view. As Mbembe reminds us, the exteriorized violence in the colonies remained latent in the metropole. Part of the work of democracies is to deaden any awareness of this latency. Traveling this cursed land, you encounter survivors, remnants clinging to existence on the margins, haunting the quiet streets of Bellerot or milling around the ancient ruins of Roa. Many of these survivors have lost even their corporeal form and exist as shades, something no longer alive but not yet dead. Though not a perfect analog, it reminded me of another passage from Mbembe. Slave life, in many ways, is a form of death in life. Because the slave's life is like a thing possessed by another person, slave existence appears as the perfect figure of a shadow. That phrase, death in life, appears nearly verbatim in Elden Ring, albeit regarding a different marginalized population in the lands between. When Marika's son Godwyn was murdered, his soul died, but his body remained, a massive rotten monument festering at the base of the Erd Tree. In days past, bodies of the dead were fed to the Erd Tree's roots to be reborn, but Godwyn's soulless husk was unable to partake in this rite, and instead began to poison the Erd Tree's root structure, creating a substance known as Deathroot. Those exposed to Deathroot could not be reborn anew through Erd Tree burial, and instead simply reanimated back to life on the spot like zombies. This was a massive violation of the tenets of Marika's Golden Order, and beings afflicted with this condition became known as those who live in death. Those who live in death are mercilessly persecuted by Golden Order zealots because they don't conform to Marika's designs for life and rebirth feeding the holy Erd Tree. While some characters have sympathy for these beings, the status quo has no place for them, and they are hidden away in catacombs when not being killed on sight. Another population persecuted by America's Golden Order are the Albinarics, a race of beings created by a long-lost civilization. Because they were given life by human hands and not born through the Erd Tree, many believe they do not have true, worthy souls. They too are pushed to the margins, either eking out existence in an embattled village above a poisoned swamp, or trekking across the frozen snowfields in search of a fabled city of refuge. One of your allies in the game is so deeply sickened by her people massacring the Albinarics that she enters a deep depression, unable to cope with her own complicity. The final objects of America's oppression are first encountered across the lands between, but trace their roots back to the land of shadows. Long before the Erd Tree dominated these lands, something known as the Crucible functioned as the forge in which life was formed. During the era of the Crucible, it is said that all life was blended with features such as horns, tails, scales, feathers, and even poisonous plant blooms sprouting on all sorts of creatures great and small. Those who worshipped the Crucible reveled in its vibrant anarchic vitality, the bombastic, endless experimentation of evolution and natural selection. When Marika ascended to Godhood, she supplanted the Crucible with the Erd Tree, rewriting the rules of life and death away from chaotic survival of the fittest and towards an orderly, mechanized process of Erd Tree burial and rebirth. But whatever method she used to overwrite the Crucible seems not to have been fully effective. A race of creatures known as the Misbegotten are born with feathers, claws, tails, and other features associated with the Crucible. Because of this, they are seen as cursed, a degenerate, retrograde species again at odds with the Erd Tree's perfection. They are often enslaved and frequently killed. Not even humans are exempt from this, though. Some children of the lands between are born with the Omen Curse, causing them to sprout horns, claws, and tails. Many parents in these lands simply kill these cursed children out of shame or perhaps a misguided sense of mercy, and those who aren't killed are often thrown into the sewers to be forgotten. Any omens with the temerity to travel in the light of day are hunted by the brutal omen killers who wear insulting caricature masks while they ply their dreadful trade. With these subjugated populations in mind, we read the following from Mbembe. Sovereignty consists in the power to manufacture an entire crowd of people who specifically live at the edge of life, or even on its outer edge, people for whom living means continually standing up to death, and doing so under conditions in which death itself increasingly tends to become spectral, thanks both to the way in which it is lived and to the manner in which it is given. This life is a superfluous one, therefore, whose price is so meager that it has no equivalence, whether market or, even less, human. This is a species of life whose value is extra-economic, the only equivalent of which is the sort of death able to be inflicted upon it. As a rule, such death is something to which nobody feels any obligation to respond. Nobody even bears the slightest feelings of responsibility or justice towards this sort of life, or rather death. Necropolitical power proceeds by a sort of inversion between life and death, as if life were merely death's medium. Such death has nothing tragic about it. When you first enter the lands between and encounter these communities and the aftermath of various incursions against them, it feels like walking in on a long-lasting conflict for which you lack any meaningful context. But by the end of the game, it becomes a bit clearer why so much effort is made to stamp out these so-called surplus populations. The Erd Tree is dying. It has stopped bestowing blessings. The cycle of death and rebirth is gummed up, and the Age of Plenty is a distant memory. Marika's Golden Order was supposed to shepherd her people into eternal happiness, but instead, it's producing only destruction. For Marika, her loyal Lord Radagon, and all the zealots of the Golden Order, the system is, or should be, perfect. It can't fail, so it must be being failed. And it can't be Golden Order zealots failing it. It must be some outside force denying everyone else the golden age they deserve. They simply cannot allow some degenerate mob of foreign bodies to pollute the world. Any and all tactics that might restore order are on the table, Mbembe writes. Anti-terrorist mobilization relies on the idea that extraordinary measures alone will enable enemies to be overcome, and that state violence ought to be able to bear down on these enemies unreservedly. In this context, the suspension of rights and lifting of the guarantees that protect individuals are presented as the condition of survival of these same rights. In other terms, the law cannot be protected by the law. Only non-law can protect it. To protect the state of law against terror, it is deemed, violence must be done to the law, or we must constitutionalize what only yesterday was seen as an exception or as outright lawlessness. At the risk of the means becoming an end in itself, every undertaking to defend the state of law and our mode of existence is seen to imply an absolute use of sovereignty. This is the world, the dominant order that you enter as the Tarnished. As the game propels you towards its final confrontation, you have choices about how to respond to this order. You can simply kill your way from the start to the end and claim the throne as America's new consort, her new weapon. You could listen to Fia, the deathbed companion, who wants you to rewrite the Elden Ring to accept those who live in death as full citizens with rights and dignity. You could listen to the loathsome Dung Eater, who believes the system should be forcibly corrupted to death by poisoning the Erd Tree with omen curses, since if everyone is cursed, no one is. Or you could listen to Goldmask, who has written a special rune that will prevent Marika or any future gods from capriciously rewriting reality. Lunar Princess Rani and Shabrari of the Frenzied Flame have some altogether more radical ideas about what ought to come next. As you contemplate this, I think there's a final necropolitical angle, a recurring event in the lands between that deserves consideration. This time, let's start with an Mbembe quote. In fact, the quote that opened this video. One cannot sanctuarize one's own home by fomenting chaos and death far away in the homes of others. Sooner or later, one will reap at home what one has sown abroad. In Elden Ring and its expansion, we learn a peculiar fact about Queen Marika, something that affects nearly every one of her known children in the game. Throughout her tenure as god, she has persecuted several different populations. The Hornsent and the Misbegotten, who worship the Crucible, the red-haired giants who tended the Giant's Flame, an enigmatic figure known as the Glowmite Queen, who was once in contention for Godhood, and, some suspect, a serpent deity who is said to be shorn of light. In addition to these direct persecutions, she rewrote the Elden Ring such that only she was considered a true god, and everything that fell outside of her visions and preferences should be excluded or sealed away. Things like a form of rapid fungal decay known as scarlet rot, or a pocket dimension immersed in infinite blood. By delimiting only certain parts of creation as holy, as something within the Golden Order, she obstructed or perhaps inadvertently created so-called outer gods, unknown beings who nevertheless whisper strange teachings to those disillusioned with the status quo. What we learn about Marika's children is that nearly all of them are afflicted by an echo emanating from the people and powers that she has oppressed. Her sons Mohg and Morgott were both afflicted with the Crucible's omen curse and abandoned in the sewers. Melania carried within her the divine energy of scarlet rot. Melina is revealed to have a gloam eye, and Mesmer is cursed by abyssal serpents. We don't know if Godwyn the Golden was afflicted by an outer god, but it is interesting that he was assassinated by affiliates of the Eternal City, a once great civilization that was swallowed by the earth at the command of Marika's patron deity, and which created the Albinarics she later hunted. Even Radagon, who we learn is Marika in a transformed body, considered his red hair and the red hair of his children an ongoing curse from the massacred fire giants. And, as a fitting continuation of this theme, America's final and possibly youngest child, Mikola, intentionally allows himself to be captured by his blood god-worshipping half-brother in a desperate play to find a back door into the land of shadows so that he can return to the gates of divinity where America became a god and undergo the same ritual. This sequence of events will ultimately lead to his true death, all but blotting America's bloodline from existence. Every population she tried to eradicate, every religion she tried to blot out, every scrap of land she tried to bury, all of them became a part of the very order she was trying to protect. All of them lay dormant in the very essence of her sovereignty, soon to be reawakened and reckoned with. Mbembe writes, "The colonial world as an offspring of democracy was not the antithesis of the democratic order. It has always been its double, or again, its nocturnal face. No democracy exists without its double, without its colony, little matter the name and the structure. The colony is not external to democracy and is not necessarily located outside its walls. Democracy bears the colony within it, just as colonialism bears democracy, often in the guise of a mask." I don't believe there's any such thing as a correct reading of a text, like a game, movie, or book. I think there are readings with more support and readings with less, reparative readings, oppositional readings, and parasitic readings. So I don't intend to make the claim that necropolitics is the one topic the developers intended to explore, nor do I claim that this is the only proper framework with which to view the game. I don't concern myself with being right so much as I do with being thoughtful. And beyond that, I reject the claim that video games are merely escapist entertainment with nothing to teach us about the real world. I struggled with this script because the real material realities that Achille Mbembe is writing in response to are deadly serious, and they deserve our respectful attention. I don't want to diminish their gravity by thoughtlessly comparing them to a game where you can throw poop at a dragon. That said, having undergone this exercise to excavate necropolitical commentary from Elden Ring, I don't think I can ever view this game outside that framework again. Even replaying parts of it to capture footage, I was struck at just how deeply the topic of who deserves to live, who deserves to die, and who decides which deaths matter comes up again and again and again in dozens of slightly different ways and with dozens of slightly different flavors. Unlike many stories, Elden Ring starts not with a birth, but with a death. Your death, which transports you to a world that is also dying, a political regime that is dying, a cosmic order that is stagnating, decaying, and threatening to waste away. Elden Ring is a world of death, and even when you win, you preside over the mechanics of death, perhaps with more justice, but never too far from its shadow. I think it's important that when we turn off the game and return to our comfortable lives in our democracies boasting their rules-based order, we remember that we too are never far from its shadow. I have put forward the notion of necropolitics or necropower to account for the various ways in which, in our contemporary world, weapons are deployed in the interest of maximally destroying persons and creating death worlds, that is, new and unique forms of social existence in which vast populations are subjected to living conditions that confer upon them the status of the living dead.